Welcome to this week's episode of Beyond the Script. My name is Nikki. I am your host of this podcast. And today we are going to discuss the roles that other people play when your manifestations become intentional. Okay. So one of the things that I want you to understand is we are constantly manifesting, right? We are always manifesting. We're always, in charge of our reality. We're always creating our reality with our beliefs and different things like that. But when we start to get intentional with our manifestations, we start to notice how other people show up in their roles, right? How other people show up in a way where we're kind of challenged to respond differently. And I'll give you some examples in a moment. But I want you to think about the last time that you really sat down and you were like, I have this vision, I'm manifesting this, it's happening, I'm putting in the work, and all of a sudden like you started to notice maybe a shift in the people around you. Maybe you started to notice that if you're a mom and you have children, this is what happens to me, like your children suddenly become a lot more needier. I don't know what it is. Well, I mean, I do. I'm gonna get into it. But every time I have an intentional manifestation, my children suddenly like they just need so much all of a sudden, right? So I want you to sit for a moment and think about that. Think about a time when you were intentionally manifesting and how that began to show up in the others around you. What was going on in the others around you? Did you feel like you were being tested during this time period? Are you like, oh my gosh, the universe is testing me, everybody's testing me, like what is happening, right? And it's not that anybody is testing you per se. At least I don't like to look at it like that. What's happening is people start playing their roles, giving you an opportunity to respond. So, I'll give you an example. And this, like I said, this always happens with my children when I'm being very intentional. Like there is just some chaos that comes from it. So when I got intentional about, how I really wanted my business to run, what I want it to look like, leaving corporate and, being a full-time entrepreneur and things like that, one of the things that I always talk about is you have to step into the identity before the identity truly exists. And one of the best analogies that I heard about with that is like think about when you're going to sleep, right? When you're trying to fall asleep, you don't just close your eyes and you're asleep. You have to pretend to be asleep before you actually fall asleep and drift off to dreamland. Think about also when you're wanting to lose weight. When you're wanting to lose weight, you start to embody the habits of somebody who is at a different weight than you, right? Before you are there. So it's the same type of concept when it comes to manifesting an intentional vision, right? You have to upgrade the identity first. So going back to that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to upgrade this identity and I am going to, I'm going to operate as the way I would as a full-time entrepreneur and a mother with 3 children. Now, the caveat is I still had my job, right? I still had the 9 to 5 to work. And so there's still that layer of pressure, if you will, right? I'm detached, but there's still tasks that need to be done, tasks that I normally wouldn't have. So in this time period, my children were struggling with their sleep. They were having a hard time like going to sleep on their own and stuff like that. And so, I would lay with them or sit with them or whatever needed to be done to help them to fall asleep. And during this time period when I was like making my declarations and I was like this is going to happen in this time frame, they is when all this happened. They suddenly were like, no, like we're not, please don't leave the room. Don't fall asleep. Don't let us fall asleep by ourselves. And like, just like suddenly like just scared of the dark and, scared of different things and stuff like that. And I was in a cycle of getting frustrated because they were not falling asleep in what I would consider a timely manner. So they're not falling asleep in a timely manner. And I'm there and I'm frustrated and like bedtime is turning into a nightmare. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, I'm getting like the nighttime scaries. It made me think of like postpartum nights, the nighttime scaries. But anyways, I'm getting these nighttime scaries, but I don't have any newborn babies at the time. And all of a sudden I thought about it and I was like, okay, from an identity standpoint and an embodiment standpoint, if I did not have 9 to 5 tomorrow, right? If I did not have work tomorrow, would I be pressed about bedtime taking longer? Would I be pressed that suddenly, all three of them need me and all three of them need me to, be in there with them and stuff like that? Would I be pressed about it? Or am I pressed about it because I feel pressed for time? Right? Because nighttime was my building hours. Nighttime were my business hours. Nighttime still are my business hours. If you follow me on Substack or on Facebook or, even like Instagram or TikTok, if you follow me on any of those platforms, you will see like, yes, some content goes out during the day, but nighttime is really when I start pushing things out. So anyways, so I'm sitting there and I'm like, would I be pressed about that? And very quickly the answer was no. The answer was no, I would not be worried about that. And because of that, I was like, okay, so then act as if it is done, right? Act if you're that detached from your job, you know that you as a full-time entrepreneur would not be pressed about this, because right now in my current reality, what's happening is I have job tasks during the day, and that would typically be business tasks, right? So I'm like, if that was the case, then move as if that's already your identity. Move as if you are already the full-time entrepreneur who has nighttime patience with the children. And so I tell you this story because that gave their role, right? Their role in my intentional manifestations gave me the opportunity to show up differently. They weren't trying to be conniving. They weren't trying to be manipulative. They were just being children, right? They weren't doing any of that. It's my perception of what's going on and my current reality that was giving me the illusion that things are blowing up in my face because now I've gotten intentional. That's not what's happening. And I want you to listen to that very carefully, that when it looks like things are blowing up in your face because you got intentional with the manifestation, that is not what's happening. What's happening is you're given the opportunity to respond differently. You are given the opportunity to show up in the way that you would show up if your vision was your reality right now. And that is the biggest takeaway with that. So when you think about the visions that you set for yourself, the manifestations that you have, the intentions that you're setting, I want you to begin to pay attention to how the people around you are acting. It's not that they've changed. They haven't changed at all. They haven't, decided that, oh, especially if you haven't spoken about your goals, okay? They haven't decided like, oh, she has these goals and I am gonna just, throw a dart in it. That conversation is between you and God, right? Your manifestation conversation, your vision board, things like that. Most of the time, that's a conversation between you and God anyways. They don't know what's going on. And so when you notice that they start to act different, it's not that they're acting different. It's that you're giving the opportunity to respond in a different way. You're giving the opportunity to respond in a way that aligns with where you're going. Another example I have is I used to be, in the very beginning when I first launched my business, back in 2020, before I left and came back, I was very shy about telling my now husband about my business. I didn't want to talk to him about it. I didn't want him to know about it. I was very secretive, and not secretive in like a manipulative way. I mean secretive as in he knew I had this thing going on. He didn't know the depths of it, right? He didn't really know, everything that I was doing and stuff like that. And I just kept him out of the loop. I kept him out of the loop. And because in my mind, it would turn into an argument. That's, it did one time and that was all it took. And I was like, okay, like this is going to be an argument every single time. So fast forward to now, and I'm like, well, I'm doing this and it can't be a secret. You can't say I want to be seen and then still be having a hidden identity somewhere. Okay, those are contradicting of what you're trying to manifest. If I'm trying to manifest that, people see me, they come and they look at my work, that I'm impacting people's lives, that I'm helping others through talking, through video, through writing, I can't have a fear of being seen by the person who I'm supposed to be seen by, or like the person closest to me, which in this case is my husband. So anyways, so this time around, it's the same thing, right? It's not necessarily that he changed, or his beliefs changed. I mean, they did to an extent, but it's more so that if I was truly going to embody what I set out to embody to match my vision, then I had to be able to embody that with everybody. I would have a hard time telling people around me that I had a business. I had no problem telling strangers, but I would have a difficult time telling the people closest to me, right? I would kind of tense up. I didn't want them to know. You know what I mean? And so when it came back to the embodiment piece, I had to embody learning how to talk about these things to the people around me, my husband included, right? Now we have very open discussions. I'm like, yeah, I'm recording a podcast today. I have a podcast that comes out every Tuesday. I have these Substack articles that I'm writing. You know what I mean? I made this investment. And the conversations are a lot different. And because of that, it allows me to show up differently. It allows me to show up in the identity that I'm supposed to be showing up in versus living essentially a double life, right? When you're manifesting with intention, you can't be living a double life intentionally. It's going to feel at times like you're living a double life because, your current reality might not match your identity yet. Think about when you're trying to fall asleep. You're not asleep yet, but you're not about to get up and be awake either, right? It's that type of concept, right? Where you do feel like you're living a little bit of a double life, especially when you're in the middle of, like the transition period and stuff like that. But you can't purposely ask for one thing and then start acting in another way or start responding in a way that is different. And this is where people are going to play, like I said, they're going to play their roles. So my husband's role, hindsight is 2020, my husband's role really was to see if I was going to fully embody the identity of being an entrepreneur, if I was going to fully embody, like, hey, this is my mission and this is what I'm supposed to be doing and this is what I'm going to be doing, right? Once I could move past that, then I was like, okay, it wasn't not malicious. It was never malicious, but it wasn't, I was triggered. I was triggered because there was an opportunity to respond differently, is what I'm trying to say, right? And so that's the other thing too, is when you look at how people are responding to you, sometimes you are triggered because it is an opportunity to move different. It is an opportunity to respond different. You see, we get in this mode of reaction, right? How many times have you reacted to something and you're like, dang, I really didn't need to do that? Or you're like, dang, I wish I hadn't reacted that way, or, I wish things would have moved different or whatever. That's because you were given the opportunity to respond and you didn't respond. You reacted. And humans do this all the time. We get emotional and we start to react, right? Until you learn a little bit of self-control, until you learn more about embodiment. Because what happens is, I guarantee, when you start to feel like, oh, I shouldn't have reacted like that, or I shouldn't have responded that way, the reason that you're feeling that is because it does not match the identity that you're wanting to embody. It matches the identity of where you came from. Now, I'm not going to say that you're going to ruin your manifestations by doing that, but you want to become aware of it. The more you become aware of it, the more you start to respond differently. Okay, things become less petty. When you start to look at triggers of other people through a different lens, as giving you the opportunity to respond in a way that you would, should you have all of the things that you desire, well, then you realize that everybody is simply playing their part. Everybody is playing their part in your reality. And that's the key right there, is it is your reality. It is your reality to shift. It is your reality to manipulate, and not negatively manipulate. That's not what I'm saying, but it is your reality to manipulate. It is your reality to create. Okay, it is your reality to step into, and everybody is going to play their part for their reality. And when two realities come together, let's say husband and wife, let's say, friendships, let's say, parent to child, whatever, right? When two realities come together, you're creating yours and they're creating theirs. And it is your job to create yours in a way that aligns with whatever your vision is. So if my vision is to be a full-time entrepreneur and a very patient mother, then obviously the way my reality is, the way that happens through me. My children are not being malicious. My husband is not intentionally, triggering me by asking questions about the business. That used to be a big trigger of mine. I was like, stop asking. It was so backwards. But anyways, um, by asking questions about how things are going, things like that. Everybody is just, they're creating their reality. And then I create mine, right? His questions give me the opportunity to be like, oh, yes, this is what's going on in business. This is my plan. This is what I've accomplished. Things like that, right? My children being rambunctious at nighttime gives me the opportunity to show up as the patient mother that I want to be. When you ask for things, you're a lot of the times when you ask for specific manifestations, you're not given them at face value. You're not given them as is. You can sometimes. I'm not saying that doesn't happen. It absolutely happens. Okay. I've had some crazy manifestations just come through that I'm like, hey, I need this, and like there it is. But a lot of the times your manifestations come by way of opportunity. They come by way of you choosing differently and acting differently. So all in all, with this brief episode, those are the things that I want you to remember as we close out. I want you to really pay attention to what you're asking for, pay attention to what you are actively working on manifesting, and then pay attention to how other people are going about their day and the opportunities that you have to respond in a way that aligns with where you're going and not where you are right now. And stop looking at everything as a trigger. Stop looking at people as trying to trigger you. Stop looking at things like, oh, it's blowing up in my face because I'm, getting intentional with my manifestations and stuff like that. That's not what it is. You're just being given the opportunity to respond in a way that aligns with what you claim you want or who you claim you want to be. So, with that being said, if you loved this episode, share it with somebody. Share it with somebody who has told you, man, every time I try to manifest something, things just start going wrong. Like people start acting crazy. Share it with somebody who said that. Let them get a little mindset shift today. And as always, if you are into identity work, intuition, manifestation, spirituality, and business. I do story selling, digital offers, and things like that for business. Make sure you are following me on Substack and subscribed. My username is at Nikki Lynn Mayo. So find me over there. I've got the same username across all platforms, Instagram, TikTok, and Threads, as well as Facebook. So connect with me over there. And like I said, share this with somebody who has at some point said the things that I just said, right? Every time I try to manifest, things get crazy. But until next time, I will talk to you all next week. Like I said, be sure to subscribe on Substack. I write almost daily on there, and I host this weekly podcast on there. So my Substack subscribers, you are always the first to get the episodes. Until next week, everybody have a wonderful time.